All right, so are you ready to completely transform your personality, like seriously revamp who you are? We're diving into this YouTube video that's gotten super popular, claims there's 18 ways to do just that.
18. Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
It is, but that's why we're here, right? To help figure out what really matters and what you can actually use in your own life.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how this video kind of taps into, everyone's desire for self-improvement. It's like this blend of really practical tips and then some pretty deep psychological concepts. So let's dive in and see what makes these strategies tick.
Okay, so the video jumps right in, and the first thing it says is, get this, looks matter.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was a little skeptical at first, too. Like, is this really where we're starting?
Right. It sounds a little superficial, maybe.
Exactly. But then they kind of break it down, and it's not really about, conforming to some, crazy beauty standard or anything.
No, I think it's more about the connection between how we present ourselves and how we feel about ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Like, when you take care of your appearance, whether it's through grooming, fitness, style, it often translates into a boost in confidence.
It's like you're sending a message to yourself and to the world that you value yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so then the video takes it a step further and talks about scent. A signature perfume.
Scent.
Really?
Yeah, I know. It seems a little out there. But when you think about it,
it is pretty powerful. Think about how a certain smell can, instantly evoke a memory, right? Or even change your mood.
True.
Our sense of smell is actually directly connected to the emotional center of our brain. So yeah, it can have a huge impact on how we perceive others and how they perceive us.
Okay, I never thought about it that way. So we've got the looks department covered. But then the video dives into something I think a lot of people struggle with. Etiquette. Good manners.
Is that really that important these days, you think?
Well, that's what I thought. But the video makes a pretty compelling case. Think about it. Etiquette is essentially about respect.
Right.
And consideration for others.
It's about understanding social cues, being mindful of different cultural norms, and navigating all these social situations with, a little bit of grace.
It's interesting because those might seem like small things, but I've noticed they can really make a huge difference in how smoothly interactions go.
Yeah.
And how you're perceived.
You know what? This reminds me of this one time I was at this networking event, and there's this person who just would not stop interrupting.
Oh, no.
Oh, it was awful. So frustrating, and it definitely did not make a good impression.
Right, exactly. It can be like a big red flag. These little etiquette missteps,
Yeah.
they can signal a lack of self-awareness.
Totally. Okay, good manners. Check. Now the video moves on to something that's super crucial in pretty much every aspect of life. Communication skills. Like active listening, being able to articulate your thoughts clearly, even things like storytelling.
Yeah, communication is at the heart of everything we do, right?
Yeah.
It's like the bedrock of strong relationships.
For sure.
And it's tied into emotional intelligence, too, which we all know is super important.
Absolutely. Oh, and the video gives this great tip. Finish your sentences, even if you get interrupted.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, right? It seems so basic, but I can see how that would really project confidence and make sure your message gets across.
Totally. It's about owning your voice and your ideas, not letting yourself get talked over.
Exactly. All right, this next part is where things get a little more, mind-bending. The video delves into metacognition and visualization.
Okay, so metacognition, what exactly is that?
I was wondering the same thing. So basically, it's thinking about your own thinking.
Cool.
Right? Becoming aware of your thought patterns, biases, how you approach problems, even how you learn best.
So it's like taking a step back and observing your own mind in action.
Exactly. And then there's visualization. Get this, the video claims that visualizing an action can actually activate the same brain areas as physically performing it.
Really? Is that true?
Apparently, there's a whole bunch of research on the power of visualization now. It's like mental rehearsal for real life.
That's fascinating. So if you want to, say, become a more confident public speaker, you should visualize yourself delivering a killer presentation.
Yeah. Might sound kind of woo-woo, but apparently the science backs it up. Okay, this next point really hit home for me. The video says, quote, "You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around."
That's a powerful thought.
Right. Made me immediately think, okay, who am I spending my time with?
Makes you take stock, doesn't it?
Yeah, big time. Because think about it. We absorb so much from the people around us. Beliefs, habits, attitudes.
It's true. Like if you're constantly hanging out with people who are complaining or putting themselves down.
Oh, yeah, that's going to rub off on you.
Absolutely. And on the flip side, surrounding yourself with positive, supportive people.
Oh, that's got to be so much better for your mindset.
Right. You're more likely to develop those qualities yourself just by being around them.
So I'm going to challenge you right now, listener. Take a minute. Think about the 5 people you spend the most time with. Do they lift you up or bring you down? It's time for a little social circle audit.
I love that. A social circle audit.
Right. Got to make sure your environment's aligned with the person you want to be. Okay, and then this next part talks about something that we all know we should do, but can be so tough, getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, that one's a classic for a reason.
Right, but I'm starting to get why it's so important. Like, the video shares this incredible story about Sudha Chandran, an Indian classical dancer.
Oh, I think I've heard of her. What's her story?
So she continued to perform after losing a leg in an accident. Like, talk about facing your fears and overcoming adversity.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know, right? And it illustrates this concept of exposure therapy perfectly. By gradually exposing ourselves to things that make us uncomfortable, we expand our comfort zone and build that confidence muscle.
It's like you're not jumping into the deep end right away, but you're slowly wading in, getting used to the water.
Yeah, exactly. Facing those fears, but one baby step at a time. Okay, and then the video dives into affirmations. I gotta be honest, I've always been a little skeptical of affirmations. Like, does repeating positive statements really make a difference?
I get it. It can feel a little teasy sometimes.
Right. But here's where that whole concept of neuroplasticity comes in again. Our brains are super adaptable, and by repeating these positive affirmations over and over, we can actually rewire those neural pathways and make those positive beliefs like ingrained in our subconscious.
Interesting. So it's like you're training your brain to focus on the positive rather than getting stuck in those negative thought loops.
Exactly. It's about creating new mental habits. The video suggests coming up with 3 personalized affirmations that, really speak to you and repeating them every day.
Oh, I like that. So what's an example of an affirmation that you think would be helpful?
What about, I'm capable of achieving anything I set my mind to?
I love that one. Very empowering.
Right. It's all about choosing affirmations that feel authentic and aligned with your goals. Okay, next up is something I think a lot of us could work on, taking initiative. The video really highlights this as a sign of a strong personality.
Yeah, think about the people you admire, the ones who seem to make things happen effortlessly. They're proactive, they're resourceful, they don't wait for permission to act.
Right. And it's interesting. Our brains are actually wired to reward us for taking initiative. They mentioned that the brain's reward center is more active when we achieve something through effort, as opposed to something that came easily.
So it's like we're programmed to find satisfaction in pushing ourselves and overcoming challenges.
Exactly. Okay, so how do we get better at taking initiative?
Well, I think it starts with just being aware of the opportunities that are all around us every day. Like, it could be as simple as volunteering for a new project at work or coming up with a new idea in a meeting.
Or even just like taking the lead on a household chore. It doesn't have to be some big, grand gesture.
Right, exactly. It's more about developing that mindset of, I'm going to step up and contribute, rather than waiting for someone else to tell me what to do.
Love that. Okay, this next point hits close to home for me because I am definitely guilty of this sometimes. Complaining.
We all do it.
Right. It's so easy to get caught up in what's wrong instead of focusing on solutions.
And it can be such a drain on your energy.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the video makes this great point about shifting from a complaining mindset to a problem-solving mindset.
That's a good reframe. Instead of, why is this happening to me? It's, what can I do about it?
Exactly. Like, yeah, things might not be perfect, but what's one thing you can do to improve the situation?
Right. Taking ownership.
Exactly. And even if it's a small step, taking action can really shift your energy from feeling helpless to feeling empowered.
Absolutely. Because even small actions can lead to big changes over time. It's about creating that momentum.
All right, let's talk about something that I think holds a lot of us back in different areas of life. The fear of rejection, it can be so paralyzing.
It's a universal fear, for sure. But the good news is, there are ways to overcome it.
The video suggests, you guessed it, exposure therapy, like gradually exposing yourself to situations that trigger that fear.
Oh.
So you kind of desensitize yourself to it over time.
Makes sense. You're not jumping into the deep end, but easing yourself in.
Right. And they even give this fun little example, wearing a bold outfit while running errands. It's like a low-stakes way to get comfortable with potentially being noticed and judged.
I like that idea. It's about reclaiming your power to express yourself, even if it means getting a few stares.
Yeah, exactly. And as you practice facing that fear in small ways, it can build your confidence in other areas of life too.
Absolutely. It's about building that resilience muscle.
Okay, this next tip is for all the knowledge lovers out there, myself included. The video recommends becoming a well-rounded conversationalist by developing expertise in a few areas of interest.
Oh, I love that. I'm a firm believer in lifelong learning.
Me too. It's like not only does having deep knowledge in certain areas make you more interesting to talk to, but it also strengthens your cognitive flexibility, your ability to think critically and connect ideas.
It's like you're building this mental library that you can draw on in any situation.
Right. And the video suggests picking 2 or 3 topics that really fascinate you and spending just like 20 to 30 minutes each day reading about them, listening to podcasts, whatever.
It doesn't have to be this huge time commitment.
Exactly. But consistency is key. Imagine like being able to hold your own in a conversation about, quantum physics or the history of art.
Right. You become this go-to person for those topics. It's cool.
Okay. And then the last one for this section is self-discipline, which, let's be honest, can be a tough one.
It's the foundation for pretty much any kind of personal growth, though, isn't it?
Totally. The video calls it a superpower, and I think they're right. But, a lot of people resist self-discipline because they see it as this restrictive, like negative thing.
Yeah, it can have that connotation, like you're depriving yourself of all the fun stuff.
Right. But the way the video frames it, it's not about denying yourself pleasure. It's about making choices that align with your long-term goals and values.
It's about delayed gratification, like
Mhm.
understanding that those small sacrifices in the present can lead to huge rewards down the road.
Exactly. And the video even mentions that our brains are wired to reward us for effort. So even though self-discipline can be tough in the moment, it actually feels good when we stick to our goals and make progress.
It's like our brains are giving us a high five for making those tough choices.
I love that. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part. From looks and etiquette to metacognition and self-discipline.
That's a lot to process.
It is. But don't worry, we're just getting started.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the psychology of change and how to actually make these transformations stick.
Welcome back. So we're continuing our deep dive into those 18 personality transforming strategies. And I think this section gets into some really interesting stuff about like the actual psychology of change.
Okay, I'm ready to go deeper. So the video emphasizes that real lasting change, it's not just about like surface level adjustments. It requires a shift in, brain chemistry,
Yeah.
like actually rewiring those neural pathways. Is that really possible?
That's where this concept of neuroplasticity becomes so crucial. It's pretty amazing, actually. Our brains are constantly adapting and reorganizing themselves based on our experiences or behaviors.
So it's not just about willpower then. There's like actual science behind how we can reshape our brains.
Exactly. And the video dives into this really interesting framework for understanding how habits form and how we can change them. It's called the cue routine reward cycle.
Okay, cue routine reward. I'm intrigued. Break it down for us. Sure. So you start by identifying the cue. That's the trigger that kind of sets the behavior in motion. Then you have the routine, which is the specific actions you take in response to that cue. And finally, there's the reward, something positive that reinforces the behavior and makes you want to do it again.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see how this works. So let's say someone wants to become like a more confident speaker. Their cue could be joining a public speaking group, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then the routine might be attending meetings regularly, practicing their speeches in front of the group.
And the reward could be that sense of accomplishment they feel after delivering a presentation. Or maybe the positive feedback they get from other members.
Right. The key is to make the routine as specific and achievable as possible. And the reward, it should be something that's really motivating for you.
Makes sense. Okay, the video also really stresses the importance of taking initiative. Something that, I don't know, I feel like it's talked about a lot, but sometimes I'm not even sure what it means in practice. Like, what does taking initiative actually look like?
Well, I think people who are good at taking initiative, they're the ones who don't just sit back and wait for things to happen to them. They're proactive, they're resourceful, they're not afraid to step up and lead.
Yeah, they're like go-getters. But I think sometimes people hesitate to take initiative because they're afraid of messing up or maybe stepping on someone's toes.
Yeah, I get that. It
Yeah.
can feel risky. But taking initiative, it's not about being like a bulldozer. It's not about taking over everything. It's about being assertive, being proactive,
Hmm.
and being willing to put yourself out there.
So how can we cultivate that, like, initiative muscle?
I think it starts with just being aware of the opportunities that are all around us every day. Like it could be as simple as, offering to help a colleague with a project or suggesting a new idea in a meeting.
Or, like we said before, even just taking the initiative to do the dishes. It doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing.
Exactly. It's more about that underlying mindset shift,
Yeah.
from passive to active.
Okay, let's talk about something that can be a major obstacle to personal growth, and that is complaining. I know I'm guilty of it sometimes. It's so easy to get caught in that negativity loop.
Oh, absolutely. We all do it.
Hmm.
But the video makes this great point about shifting from a mindset of complaining to a mindset of problem solving.
Right. It's about taking ownership of this situation.
Exactly. And realizing that we often have more control than we think we do.
Okay, that makes sense. But honestly, sometimes it feels like complaining is such a deeply ingrained habit. How do we actually make that shift?
It takes conscious effort. But one thing that can help is to, whenever you catch yourself complaining about something, stop and ask yourself, what's one thing I could do to change this?
Hmm. Oh, I like that. So instead of dwelling on the problem, you're forcing yourself to think of a solution.
Right, exactly. It might not solve the whole problem, but it's a starting point.
Makes sense. All right, this next topic is something I think a lot of us can relate to. The fear of rejection. It can be so paralyzing and prevent us from doing all sorts of things.
It's a universal fear, absolutely. But there are ways to overcome it.
So the video suggests, you guessed it, exposure therapy, but like in a gradual way. So you're slowly exposing yourself to situations that trigger that fear and kind of desensitizing yourself over time.
It's like dipping your toes in the water rather than just diving in head first.
Right. And they give this kind of funny example like wearing a bold outfit while running errands. It's a low stakes way to get comfortable with, potentially being noticed and judged.
I like that. It's a good reminder that we don't have to make these huge dramatic changes all at once. We can start small.
Yeah, exactly. And as you practice facing that fear in small ways, it can build your confidence in other areas of your life too.
Absolutely. It's like a ripple effect.
Okay, this next tip is for all the knowledge nerds out there, myself included. The video recommends becoming a well-rounded conversationalist by developing expertise in a few areas that you're really interested in.
Oh, I love that. I'm all about lifelong learning.
Me too. And it's not just about being, interesting to talk to at parties. Having deep knowledge in certain areas actually strengthens your cognitive flexibility, like your ability to think critically and make connections between ideas.
It's like you're building this mental library that you can draw on in any situation.
Right. And the video suggestion is pretty simple. Just pick 2 or 3 topics that you find fascinating and spend like 20 to 30 minutes each day reading about them, listening to podcasts, whatever.
Yeah, consistency is key.
Imagine like being able to hold your own in a conversation about quantum physics or the history of art.
Right. You become like a mini expert.
Okay, and then finally we have self-discipline, which, I'll be honest, is a word that can feel a little bit intimidating sometimes.
Yeah, it can have that connotation like it's all about deprivation and being hard on yourself.
Right. But the video really emphasizes that self-discipline isn't about punishing yourself. It's about making choices that are aligned with your long-term goals and values.
It's about delayed gratification. Like understanding that the things that are truly worthwhile, they often require effort and sacrifice in the present moment.
Yeah, it's about playing the long game. And, the video even mentions that our brains are wired to reward us for effort. So even though self-discipline can be tough in the moment, it actually feels good when we stick to our goals and make progress.
It's like our brains are giving us a high five.
Right. Okay, let's get real for a minute. Life is full of ups and downs. Even when we're committed to like personal growth and all that, we're going to face setbacks, we're going to have challenges. So how does the video address like the emotional side of all this?
It really emphasizes the importance of emotional regulation, which is, the ability to manage our emotions effectively, especially when things get tough.
Yeah, it's about not letting our emotions control us, right? Like having the skills to ride those waves without getting completely swept away.
Exactly. And the video actually suggests a few techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, that can be really helpful for this.
So CBT, it's all about like recognizing those negative thought patterns and learning how to challenge them, right?
Exactly. And one of the simplest but most effective techniques is deep breathing. Remember that box breathing exercise we talked about before?
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. Simple, but powerful.
Right. It's amazing how something so simple can really help to calm your nervous system and bring you back to the present moment.
Okay, I'm a big believer in the power of deep breathing. And then this next concept is something that I think is so important, but also so hard to wrap our heads around sometimes. Reframing failure. Like, most of us have been taught to see failure as this terrible thing to avoid at all costs.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Failure has such a negative connotation in our culture.
But this video, it encourages us to see failure as an opportunity for learning and growth.
It's about shifting that perspective, right? From
Right.
seeing failure as like a sign of weakness to seeing it as feedback.
Exactly. And they actually use this really interesting example from a Bollywood film, Kuch Hota Hai. There's a character who makes like a major fashion faux pas, and it highlights the importance of being open to feedback, even when it's uncomfortable.
Well, that's a good point. Sometimes we need that outside perspective to help us see our blind spots.
Totally. We can get so caught up in our own heads that we lose objectivity. And it's not just about seeking out negative feedback. It's about being open to positive feedback, too.
Absolutely. Recognizing and celebrating our strengths is just as important as acknowledging our weaknesses.
Okay, and then speaking of celebrating wins, the video wraps up by emphasizing the power of gratitude.
Gratitude. Such a simple concept, but so powerful.
Right. It's more than just like a nice feeling. It actually has like a ton of benefits for our well-being.
It's been shown to reduce stress, improve sleep, boost happiness.
Yeah, there's a ton of research on it. And I know from personal experience, when I make an effort to cultivate gratitude, it really does shift my perspective. Like, I start noticing all the good things in my life, even the small things, and it makes me feel more content, more optimistic.
It's like an antidote to that negativity bias that we all have.
Totally. And the video encourages us to make gratitude a daily practice, whether it's keeping a gratitude journal or just taking a moment each day to reflect on the things you're grateful for.
It's about training our brains to focus on the abundance in our lives rather than what we lack.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this segment, from building new habits and taking initiative to regulating our emotions and reframing failure.
We've been through the ringer.
We have, but don't worry, there's one more part to this deep dive.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll wrap it all up and talk about how to actually put these strategies into practice.
Okay, welcome back. So this is it, the final part of our deep dive into these 18 personality transforming strategies. I feel like we've already learned so much, but now it's like, okay, how do we actually apply all this stuff to our own lives?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, hasn't it? From like practical tips on etiquette to deep dives into brain science. So much to unpack.
Right. So let's bring it all together. Remember how the video started with that whole thing about looks mattering?
Oh, yeah. I remember being a little surprised by that one at first.
Me too. But then they kind of explained it and it started to make more sense. Like, it's not about trying to be some, supermodel or whatever.
Right. It's not about conforming to some external standard of beauty. It's more about like the connection between how we present ourselves and how we feel about ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when you take care of your appearance, whether it's through grooming, fitness, style, it can give you that boost in confidence, project a sense of self-respect.
It's like sending a message to the world. Hey, I value myself.
Right. And then they took it a step further, talking about scent. Signature perfume, remember?
Scent. That one was a little unexpected.
I know, but when you think about it.
It is powerful, though. Think about how a certain smell can just like instantly bring back a memory or evoke a strong emotion.
Oh, yeah, like the smell of like freshly baked cookies or something.
Exactly. Our sense of smell is actually directly connected to the limbic system, which is the emotional center of our brain. So yeah, it makes sense that it would have a big impact on how we perceive others and how they perceive us.
Makes you wonder if maybe we should all be putting a little more thought into our signature scents.
Maybe so. All right, so moving on from the sensory stuff, the video also talked about the importance of etiquette, which honestly, I feel like a lot of people might dismiss as kind of old-fashioned these days.
Yeah, me too. Like, who cares about all those stuffy rules?
But the way the video presented it, it's not really about those like rigid rules, It's more about respect and consideration for others.
Right. It's about being mindful of social cues, understanding different cultural norms, like just basically making those social interactions go more smoothly.
And making a good impression.
Totally. Like, I'm thinking about that person at the networking event, the one who kept interrupting everyone. That was not a good look.
Not at all. And it's like those little etiquette missteps, they can say a lot about you.
Right. Okay, so good manners. Check. Now let's talk about something that's super important in pretty much every area of life. Communication skills.
Ah, yes, the foundation of all relationships.
Seriously. And I love how the video really emphasized active listening. Like, it's not just about waiting for your turn to talk. It's about really hearing and understanding what the other person is saying.
And being able to articulate your own thoughts clearly, right?
Yeah.
Knowing how to tell a good story.
Oh, and remember that tip about finishing your sentences, even if you get interrupted.
Oh, that's a good one. I need to practice that more.
Me too. It's such a simple thing, but it can make a big difference in how you come across.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is the part that always gets me a little, mind blown. Metacognition and visualization.
I know. It's like, whoa, we're going deep into the brain now.
So metacognition is basically thinking about your own thinking, right?
Right. Like becoming aware of those thought patterns, biases. It's kind of trippy when you think about it.
It is, but it can be so helpful. Because once you become aware of those patterns, then you can start to change them.
Exactly. And then there's visualization. The video claimed that just visualizing something, like performing an action, can actually activate the same brain areas as if you were physically doing it.
It's like mental rehearsal. And there's actually a lot of research to support that. Athletes use visualization all the time to improve their performance.
So if I want to get better at public speaking, I should just picture myself giving an amazing presentation, feeling super confident.
Exactly. It might sound a little woo-woo, but the science is there.
All right, I'm going to give it a try. Okay, now this next point really stuck with me. That quote about being the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around.
Oh yeah, that one's powerful.
Right. It really makes you think about who you're surrounding yourself with.
Because we really do absorb so much from the people we're around. Their energy, their beliefs, their habits. It all rubs off on us.
So true. And I think it's a good reminder to do a little audit of your social circle every once in a while. Make sure those people are lifting you up, not dragging you down.
Absolutely. Okay, and then we talked about the importance of getting out of your comfort zone, which, easier said than done,
All
right?
right. Tell me about it. But, I'm starting to see why it's so important. Like, the more you push yourself, the more you realize you're capable of.
Right, and it builds resilience. Like, remember the story about Sudha Chandran, the dancer who continued to perform after losing a leg? Talk about inspiring.
I know, right? She's like the ultimate example of overcoming adversity. Okay, affirmations. I'll be honest, I've always been a little bit skeptical of affirmations. Like, does just repeating positive statements really do anything?
I get it.
Yeah.
It can feel kind of cheesy. But here's the thing. Our brains are incredibly adaptable. And by repeating these affirmations over and over, we can actually create new neural pathways and rewire our brains to think more positively.
So it's like we're literally changing the structure of our brains by doing this.
Pretty much. It's like we're training our brains to focus on the positive rather than defaulting to those negative thought patterns.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so what's a good affirmation that we can all start using today?
How about, I am worthy of love and happiness?
Oh, I love that one. All right, next up we have taking initiative, which I think a lot of people struggle with because they're afraid of messing up or stepping on someone's toes.
Yeah, I get that. But taking initiative doesn't have to be this big scary thing. It's really just about being proactive and resourceful.
So instead of waiting for someone to tell you what to do, you just step up and do it.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be some huge project or anything. It could be something as simple as offering to help a colleague with a task or suggesting a new idea in a meeting.
Or, taking the initiative to clean the kitchen after dinner. It's all about that mindset shift.
Right. From passive to active.
Okay, now let's talk about something that can be a major energy drain. Complaining. We all do it, right? It's so easy to get caught up in what's wrong instead of focusing on solutions.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely guilty of this sometimes. But the video made such a good point about, consciously shifting from a complaining mindset to a problem-solving mindset.
It's like instead of asking, why is this happening to me, ask yourself, what can I do to change this?
Exactly. Take ownership of the situation.
And even if you can't solve the whole problem, just taking one small step can make a big difference in how you feel.
Absolutely. It's about feeling empowered rather than helpless.
Okay, let's talk about something that holds so many of us back, the fear of rejection. It can be so paralyzing and prevent us from doing all sorts of things, from pursuing our dreams to just speaking up in a meeting.
It's a tough one, for sure. But the video actually gives some really practical tips for overcoming it.
Like exposure therapy, right?
Right. but like in a gradual, manageable way. So you're slowly exposing yourself to situations that trigger that fear and kind of building up your tolerance over time.
Like baby steps.
Yeah, exactly. And they even give that fun example of wearing a bold outfit while running errands. It's a low-stakes way to get comfortable with being seen and potentially judged.
And realizing that, hey, even if someone doesn't like my outfit, it's not the end of the world.
Exactly. Okay, this next tip is for all my fellow knowledge lovers out there. The video recommends becoming a well-rounded conversationalist by developing expertise in a few areas that really interest you.
Oh, I'm all about that. I think it's so cool when people have, like, deep knowledge in certain areas. It makes them so much more interesting to talk to.
Right, and it doesn't have to be anything super academic or anything. It could be like anything you're passionate about.
Totally. Like, you could become the go-to person for all things craft beer or vintage comic books or whatever.
Exactly. And it's not just about being interesting to talk to. Having deep knowledge in certain areas also strengthens your cognitive flexibility.
So, like, your ability to think critically and see things from different perspectives.
Exactly.
Okay, and last but not least, we have self-discipline, which, let's be honest, can be a tough one.
It's the foundation of pretty much any kind of personal growth, though.
Right. But I think a lot of people have this negative association with self-discipline. Like, they see it as all about deprivation and restriction.
Yeah, it gets a bad rap. But it's really not about that. It's about making choices that are in alignment with your long-term goals and values.
It's about being willing to delay gratification, like knowing that those small sacrifices you make in the present can lead to big rewards down the road.
And it's not about being perfect. It's about progress, not perfection.
Totally. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From the power of appearance and scent to the importance of etiquette and communication skills. From the mind-bending concepts of metacognition and visualization to the challenges of taking initiative, overcoming complaining, conquering the fear of rejection, becoming a lifelong learner, and mastering the art of self-discipline. It's a lot.
We've been through the ringer, but I hope our listeners are feeling inspired, maybe even a little bit empowered to start making some changes in their own lives.
Me too. And remember, you don't have to do everything at once. Just pick one or two things that really resonate with you and start there. Small changes over time can lead to big transformation.
Absolutely. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and don't be afraid to ask for support along the way. You got this.
And that wraps up our deep dive into personality transformation. We hope you enjoyed it.
Until next time.